in 1 Kings 19. Why is it that people seem to think that Elijah had a Great Depression? Seriously, I mean, does anybody know why this is preached all the time? What commentary do people read this out of? I mean, is this where this came about? And maybe, you're under that impression yourself, and maybe you're a commentary reader, and if then I'd feel really appreciative if you were to post your answer here at the bottom of this video and say, where that notion comes from. Because when I read 1 Kings 19, I don't get that. I don't get this deep, dark depression, excessive misery. Whoa! Okay? Here's what it says. Now my brother-in-law had a good point here right off the bat where it says, Ahab told Jezebel all that Elijah had done. And Elijah didn't do the stuff, the bringing fire down from heaven, destroying those prophets, also, burning up the sacrifice, and, and all of that, and withholding the rain, then letting the rain happen. These weren't of Elijah. These were of God, of course. And with all how he had slain all the prophets with the sword, and Jezebel sent a messenger unto Elijah saying, so let the gods do to me, and more also, the gods, little g, if I make not thy life as the life of one of them by tomorrow about this time. All right, I'm just going to roll through this and kind of give you what the Lord's kind of shown me. All right, first of all, if somebody said, I'm going to run you over with my Mack truck, you could say, well, I don't believe the Lord's going to allow you to kill me, so I'll just stand right here, and we'll see who prevails. You and your Mack truck, or God will allow me. Well, you'll be smushed. You'll be run over, unless there's some sort of course, miraculous thing comes along that God allows that diverts that Mack truck from running you over. But I would say you're tempting the Lord if you're going to just stand there and say, come on, hit me, big boy. Lord's given you two good legs. You're able to get out of the way. Well, that's what Elijah did here. He left. He didn't going to stand there. All right, here's another example. I used to wonder why Jesus would often say when he healed somebody, go, don't tell anybody who did this for you. When I was a dopey kid, I thought, well, it's probably like God was, or Jesus was doing some sort of reverse psychology thing. Don't tell anybody. And then he knew the way people are, so he knew that if you tell them not to do it, they'll just go ahead and do it, That'd be deception, Jesus doesn't do that kind of thing. So the real deal was, remember when John 2, right, where Jesus changed the water into wine. Mary came to him and said, oh, come on, show him what you can do. And he said, woman, what have I to do with thee? Mine hour is not yet come. Well, his ministry hadn't become public yet, so he wasn't going to take it upon himself to say, no, I'm going to, I'll just do this, He's waiting for God's okay. So obviously God gave him the okay somehow, even though it's not recorded. So he went ahead and did the miracle there, and his public ministry began. But when he would heal people and say, don't go telling people, because his hour was not yet come. They would come and take him by force and carry him to be crucified, and that time was not yet. So Jesus was not going to tempt the Father. Remember the devil, this is where Jesus said, it is written, thou shalt not tempt the Lord thy God. When the devil came to him and said, look, God will take care of you because, I'm going to misquote Psalm 91 here. And the devil said, throw yourself off, this high place, and, his angel will have charge over thee, all that. And that's where Jesus said, thou shalt not tempt the Lord thy God. I'm not going to, tempt him as though I'm going to kill myself here just to prove him. No, he wouldn't do that. So that's why he would heal and say, don't tell anybody, because he was going to tempt the Lord his God and say, well, he'll protect me, even though they're going to let on to the, all those guys that hate me too early, and, so I think you get the point. So Jezebel, sent him that message to Elijah, and he left, and it says, and when he saw that, he arose and went for his life and came to Beersheba, and there which belonged to Judah, and left his servant there. But he himself went a day's journey into the wilderness, and came and sat down under a juniper tree, and he requested for himself that he might die, and said, "It is enough now, O Lord, take away my life, for I'm not better than my fathers." Now, if it weren't for that last little phrase there, you could say, oh yeah, he's feeling sorry for himself now, he wants to die. But if you take back just a couple of verses, that don't make sense, because if you're going to put the emphasis on the fact of, he's saying, let me die, well, he would have just stayed there with Jezebel if he really wanted to die, right? I mean, I'll just let Jezebel kill him. But no, he knew it wasn't in the power of Jezebel to take his life, but in the power of God. God would be the one to decide when his life was done. And so he gave God that respect. But he also was very humble about it, because he says, "For am I not better than my fathers?" He really felt like, I believe, I'm not worthy to be doing this stuff. I felt a little creeped out probably. God's wrought many great miracles through him. That thing that just occurred there with dumping all the water on the sacrifice, and then the fire coming down from heaven and consuming that sacrifice. I mean, he didn't do that to lift himself up in pride and to show himself as some great guy. He did it in obedience to God, and God, wrought that great and mighty miracle through him. So, but he's saying, I don't deserve this, but I don't know, but he showed that he was very humble by saying, "For am I not better than my fathers?" It wasn't like, I feel sorry for myself, I want to die. Like these guys, they'll promote this kind of notion, and I think it's wrong. And as he lay and slept under a juniper tree, because then they'll also say that he ran, all this great distance and, did it on his own because he was feeling sorry for himself. Okay, well then, look, if he was led into depression, through this whole thing, or if he was in depression, well then, you're going to say that God led him into depression. You're going to say, that God caused the depression even, because look what happened here. An angel sustained him. Now, if Elijah was off doing something on his own, I don't believe God's blessing would have been upon him. I think, he wouldn't have sustained him for the journey ahead if it wouldn't have been of God. Now, people say, well, yeah, we know it's of God, but he's still feeling sorry for himself. Let's continue. As he lay and slept under a juniper tree, behold, an angel touched him and said unto him, "Arise and eat." And he looked, and behold, there was a cake baking on the coals, and a cruse of water at his head. And he did eat and drink, and laid him down again. And the angel of the Lord came again the second time, and touched him, and said, "Arise and eat, because the journey is too great for thee." Didn't say anything about he was planning on any big journey, but now this notion is posed. The journey is too great for thee. Look, I'm going to feed you, and you're going to go 40 days and 40 nights to Horeb. Very significant place. For that's where God met with Moses to give him the 10 Commandments. That's where God showed himself to Moses. And Moses' face shone as did Jesus's at the Mount of Transfiguration. Interesting. Who are the 3 people in the Bible to ever fast that are mentioned that fast 40 days and 40 nights? Well, Moses and Elijah and Jesus. Who met with Jesus besides the disciples at the Mount of Transfiguration? Oh, it was Moses and Elijah. Well, both those guys were at Horeb. Seems pretty significant to me. Doesn't sound like some pity party that's going on here. So, and he rose and did eat and drink, and went in the strength of that meat 40 days and 40 nights unto Horeb, the mount of God. And he came thither to a cave and lodged there, and behold, the word of the Lord came unto him, and he said unto him, What doest thou here, Elijah? And he said, I have been very jealous for the Lord God of hosts, for the children of Israel have forsaken thy covenant, thrown down thine altars, and slain thy prophets with the sword, and I, even I only, am left, and they seek my life to take it away. And the ones who preach this put emphasis on the last part there, about him saying, I, even I only, am left, and they seek my life to take it away. Yeah, well, he's not lying. I mean, and my brother-in-law also mentioned out the fact that, he didn't know necessarily who was left, so he thought he was left. So what's wrong with that? They didn't have cell phones and communication back in those days to pass along. Now the Lord could have let him know who was still around, and he does later on. Okay, so God did give him that realization of what the deal really was, But first, some other important things occurred, of course, and you'll remember this passage, I'm sure, very well, where it says, and he said, this is the Lord speaking, "Go forth and stand upon the mount before the Lord. And behold, the Lord passed by, and a great and strong wind rent the mountains, and brake in pieces the rocks before the Lord. But the Lord was not in the wind." You see a lot of stuff these days about hurricanes and different things and, terrible storms. Some of those folks know what the wind is like and have seen the destruction of it. Can you imagine being all by yourself in nothing but a cave? In fact, the fear of the cave caving in on you probably from those winds. So God brings this big, mighty wind, and after the wind, an earthquake. And we even here on the East Coast within the last few weeks felt an earthquake that was down in Virginia, and even here in New York. My wife sitting doing her work here at home, and she felt her chair move. She thought my daughter was jiggling her chair. She was going to turn around and give her the what for. Found out my daughter wasn't even in the room. And so, mighty earthquake. And here's Elijah right in the middle of one. And it says, "And after the earthquake, a fire. But the Lord was not in the fire." Well, I messed the part up where I didn't say that the Lord was not in the wind. "And after the wind, an earthquake. But the Lord was not in the earthquake. And after the earthquake, a fire. But the Lord was not in the fire." Now, of course, the Lord brought these things about, but he didn't reveal himself in those things. "And after the fire, a still small voice. And it was so, when Elijah heard it, that he wrapped his face in his mantle, and went out and stood in the entering of the cave. And behold, there came a voice unto him that said, What doest thou here, Elijah?" So what was already asked before that stuff all took place. That was the exact same question. And note Elijah's answer is exactly the same as it was before. And when Elijah heard it, he wrapped his face. I already read that. And he said, "I have been very jealous for the Lord God of hosts, because the children of Israel have forsaken thy covenant, thrown down thine altars, and slain thy prophets with the sword. And I, even I only, am left, and they seek my life to take it away." And the Lord said unto him, "What's the matter with you? Get out of your depression." What? No, I'm sorry. The Lord said unto him, "Go, return on thy way to the wilderness of Damascus, and when thou comest, anoint Hazael to be king over Syria." The Lord didn't say, rebuke him and say, "You're wrong. You're feeling sorry for yourself." Let me ask you something. What's the greatest commandment? Oh, to love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, and with all thy soul, and with all thy strength. That's what it said in the Old Testament. The New Testament says, love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, and with all thy soul, and with all thy mind, because it's a spiritual thing now, not a physical thing. But nonetheless, to love the Lord thy God, first commandment. And the second is like unto it. Well, then, before we get to the second commandment, which I think you already know, let me read what Elijah's response was again. He said, "I've been very jealous for the Lord God of hosts." Is he feeling sorry for himself? No, "I've been very jealous for the Lord God of hosts." Not for himself. The second is like unto it, to love thy neighbor as thyself. Second part of his comment, "Because the children of Israel have forsaken thy covenant, thrown down thine altars, and slain thy prophets with the sword." So he's concerned about Israel too. He's concerned about the people, how they've forsaken the Lord. And then the last thing he says is about himself. So I'd say Elijah's priorities are straight. So if you're one of these dopes that are out there reading from commentaries or whatever that it is that you're getting this stuff from, stop it. Okay? Read the book. It's right in front of you. He loves the Lord his God with all his heart, and with all his soul, and with all his mind. Then he loves his neighbor as himself and puts himself last. Once again, that comment that he made earlier. He wants to be taken away. He goes, "For I am not better than my fathers. There's nothing special about me." Then God doesn't rebuke him here. And I take this as just like another mountaintop experience that Abraham had. God said to Abraham, "I want you to take thy son, thine only son, Isaac, and offer him up." God never intended for Abraham to offer Isaac. He just wanted Abraham to show his willingness. Here, Elijah proved what he was saying. God put him through this terror of the earthquake, the wind, and the fire. And then afterwards asked him again, "What are you doing here?" Let's see if you change your story after that spook show. No. He spoke to him in a still small voice, and Elijah listened as he always did. Then the Lord revealed to him that there were 7,000. 7,000 what? Priests? Maybe. Doesn't say. Prophets? I don't know. Just says there's 7,000 that have not bowed the knee to Baal. Where is it? Yet I have left me 7,000 in Israel, all the knees which have not bowed unto Baal, and every mouth which hath not kissed him. So, if you're tempted to teach the lesson of Elijah so that you can tell your folks, don't be depressed. Hey, better put the emphasis on God here, because actually I didn't do that myself. But the emphasis is on God, who wrought the mighty work. There's my little lesson. I think I got it all in, all the thoughts, the cool thoughts the Lord's given me about this thing with Elijah. What do you think, huh? Post a comment in the comment section below. Feel free to thumb up this video, or if you're some of my former friends, you do that thing to it too. But thanks for joining me.